Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Mike, the founder and CEO at Kosli. Hello.
Hi.
Very nice to meet you. Please tell us what your company does.
Sure. So Kosli is a company that's basically a platform in the DevOps space around compliance and audit. So what we do is we help predominantly customers in regulated industries like financial services, banking, medical, safety critical devices, meet their auditors without paperwork and bureaucracy. How I normally introduce the company for a general audience is it's to make an analogy. And the analogy is this. If you go yourself into a coffee shop, say you go to Starbucks, you ask for a coffee, you request it, you pay for it, they bring you coffee, you walk away, everyone gets what they want. The coffee shop gets their money, you get your coffee, and that's the end of the story. But say you're on a business trip and you want to buy a coffee and you want to expense it to the company, then the transaction changes a little bit. You actually ask for a receipt.
Yes.
And that receipt goes into probably an accounting system somewhere. There's tax implications. They will likely be audited, the accounts. There's a whole story around this. And so software is a bit like that. A lot of software engineers don't need the receipts for how they work. They don't need to keep history of all the code reviews and the tests and the security scans and the deployments. Most people just are okay with the pipeline taking care of that and it's over. But if you're a software engineer in a bank, or if you're making software that goes into an MRI machine, then actually you have regulators, auditors, all kinds of standards to meet, and you need the receipts. And that's what Kosli helps with. We collect all the receipts that you followed your process.
Thank you for explaining. What are the main products that you offer to the customers?
Well, it's really one product, and like the way it works is quite simple. Kosli is kind of like a flight data recorder for all the DevOps stuff that goes on in your environment. So normally we start by recording what's running in your environments. So we kind of build up a version control history of what's running. So if it's a Kubernetes cluster, a Docker host, Lambda environments, S3 buckets, we're just cryptographically fingerprinting everything and creating like a historical record of what was there at a given time in history. And because it's a little bit like version control, you get a change log, you can go back in time and see what was running in the past, and you can diff between two different times. So you can say, what's the difference on this Kubernetes cluster between today and yesterday? Or you can say, what's the difference between our staging cluster and a production cluster?
Okay.
So that's the start of it. And then, okay, now you've got a complete history of what's running. The next question is, well, where did those changes come from, and did they meet with our process? So this is where we start to add logging into your CI/CD pipelines. So we'll record the builds. So this artifact with this SHA-256 sum was built from this Git commit and this URL. And, that's how we find out what's running and where it came from. You can start to add other pieces of evidence like the pull request information, the security scans, the test results, whatever happens to be part of your process. So you know what's in production, where it came from, if it's compliant. That's basically the basis for any kind of software audit. So when the auditor comes in and says, I'd like a list of all the changes to this service for the last 12 months, and please give it to me as an Excel sheet. You just get it out of Kosli. You're done in 2 minutes, and you don't have to go from CI system to pipeline logs to cloud infrastructure to Jira tickets. It's all just there. But what's kind of interesting as well is like now that we have this complete data store of what's going on in DevOps, we can start to do other things, like we can give you an alert in Slack or an email or hit a webhook when an unexpected workload is running in your environments. Or if you just want a feed of all the changes to production in Slack, we can do that. So kind of you can build other automation on top of Kosli.
Amazing. What did you say was your other most common integrations with Kosli?
Well, Slack, I would say, is the most common one. Other than as an output side, Slack is definitely the most common. People want to know what's going on. Slack is really the fire hose of information in most organizations now. But it could be Teams, it could be Google Chat, it could be anything really. So we also, on the input side, where we support all the CI platforms, like we can ingest JUnit results, sneak scans, all the typical things that you would want to keep track of.
And what is the pricing for Kosli?
Well, we start with a free tier. So if you're a small team, you can use us for free.
Amazing.
When you start to need more resources from us in terms of the number of pipelines you have or the number of days you need to keep a history for, then you would kind of migrate into paid plans, and they start from $99 a month per flow. So, it's a kind of a usage-based model. So, and with a generous free tier.
Thank you for sharing. And how competitive is your space? And how do you differentiate from the rest?
Well, we're not very competitive at all in this space, if I'm perfectly honest. There's not many kind of security and audit tools focused on the pipeline or your DevOps.
Okay.
So there's a lot of complementary tools in the space, like so on the governance and compliance spaces, you've got tools like Drata and Vanta, which are really good at like organizational compliance, but they're not really focused on the software development process. And then you have tools that are really focused on, like for instance, cloud compliance. There's a lot of tools around securing and making your cloud infrastructure compliant. But that's really only telling you about the runtime. It's not talking about how you do your work and how it gets there, which is actually where a lot of the compliance headaches fall in a software organization.
That makes total sense. So I'm super happy for you. I'd love to know, when did you start the company and what was the idea behind it?
We started 4 years ago now.
Okay.
The background is kind of fun. Like, I'm a technologist. I've always been a technologist. I studied computer science. I've been in this world for my whole career. Before starting Kosli, I was a CTO and a partner in a DevOps consulting business. We grew it to 50 people, and we were acquired in 2019. And it was, through that work that I saw the opportunity. We'd often go in and consult with places where there was more constraints or challenges around DevOps, like financial services, automotive,
yes,
healthcare. And, everyone felt like they had very unique challenges. Oh, we've got to meet the auditor, or I like to meet this ISO standard, or the regulators are going to not like this. But you zoom out, it's all the same thing. It's like you have to have a process, you have to follow the process, and DevOps is great for helping you do that. And then the third thing is you need the proof. You need the receipts, right, that you followed your process. And this was the same problem everywhere. Like, there's no good way to organize. There was like no bookkeeping system for DevOps.
yes.
But like, how hard can it be? Well, it turns out it's actually quite a technical challenge, but we got there in the end. And like solving it can actually make a big difference in an organization. So one of our best customers is a crypto exchange. And, they're extremely regulated. They have a lot of challenges around meeting IT risk and the regulators. But this company, they had over 110,000 changes to their systems last year.
Wow.
And that was all recorded automatically with Kosli, so they didn't have to do tickets, meetings, manual processes. It just happened. And their audits they went from 3 months to 3 days in the software side. It can really make a big difference. If you've never experienced software audit, you don't know how painful and time consuming it can be. And most of it's not very value add. It's like, just where do I find the receipts?
That's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing. It shows how important is Kosli. Wow. And I'd love to know, how big is the team right now, the overall team?
We're 15 people spread across Europe and America at the moment.
Have you raised any funding?
Yeah, so we raised our seed funding led by HeavyBit in San Francisco. So if you haven't heard of HeavyBit, they're a very interesting venture capital firm. Most of the partners in the company have been founders at dev tool companies before.
Wow.
One of them. James was a founder at Heroku. Jesse was a founder at Chef. Joe was a founder at Librato. So they've all built companies in this space. They only invest in developer tool companies. They're very hands-on. They don't make a lot of investments, but they've been extremely successful. So they were the seed fund for LaunchDarkly, PagerDuty, Stripe, Netlify, a lot of the very successful breakout developer tools over the last few years. So they've got a great track record, and they've been super helpful for us figuring out how to build the business around this technology we've made.
Great mindset. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate the transparency. Do you think you found product market fit?
Wow, that's a good question. It depends, right? So like part of me is like very much in the camp of yes, we've got great customers who renewal, we've got expansion pricing, we solve a big problem in the space. But then again, maybe not. Like it's easy to kid yourself you've got product market fit early because you've got revenue and you've got fans. But there is like this, there's this gap. Like some people call it go-to-market fit, like which is how do you build the sales engine or how do you build the commercial or go-to-market engine that fits for your company? That's definitely something still a work in progress for us. And how much you consider that part of product market fit depends. Like, got great customers, good logos, great revenue growth. So all the basics are there, but I don't want to call victory on product market fit too early.
Of course, I understand. And what would you say was your biggest challenge since starting the company?
Well, I mean, nothing's easy about doing a startup. So it's all been a bit of a challenge. I guess figuring out you're always resource constrained in a startup. You can only pick certain decisions and you can only invest in certain activities. So figuring out what works, what doesn't. On the technical side, it's a bit easier because it's a space we're all used to making trade-offs and prioritizing. But when it comes to, for instance, marketing and sales, that's a much harder decision. Like, should we sponsor this conference or not? Well, that's really hard to know up front. And you kind of have to get into this mindset of, okay, what tests are we going to do? Which ones, like, there's a lot of things that didn't work for us when it came to figuring out the go-to-market and what activities we should do. But you have to do the test. So to consider them failures as well is maybe not the right thing either. Where the real failures are is if you keep in the same process of investing in the wrong thing.
I love your mindset. What did you say was your most successful go-to-market strategy today?
Wow, that's a very good question as well. We started very much like this is a company that had revenue from before it was founded. So we have maybe we got in the habit of selling to shall we say a decision maker, and it took us, because we had focused that on our first couple of years, we didn't really maybe get so far along in terms of bottom up PLG, that kind of approach. So I think that's the area that we're kind of excited about just now, because our free tier is actually something that seems to be, I mean, our product is not for the general audience, not for everybody. But still, we see companies coming along and trying us for free. And it turns out that they're from really big companies who have audit problems. So as a go-to-market strategy, this was really important and it maybe could have come earlier, actually.
Makes total sense. But it's a surprise to see that people from large companies are wanting a free trial. So maybe you should invest more in PLG. Everybody loves it.
Yeah, so I mean, what's quite interesting is it's kind of like a free trial because they're never going to use us in production on a free plan.
Yeah.
And they will, it's more like the technologists are doing some due diligence before they take a sales meeting.
Yeah, makes
But
sense.
what's quite interesting is how far along they go before they get in touch. So they actually self-serve into quite a lot of product features before even really reaching out or contacting us in our community. It's I hadn't expected that, but it's very refreshing to see.
What is the vision for the future of the company?
Well, right now a big focus is America. So we started the company in Norway, in Oslo, and we've had customers from day one, basically, here and in Europe, and it's been very comfortable, right? You know, everyone's here in the same time zone. We know how to do things, but you know, at a certain stage, you have to actually bring this product to market, and America is the biggest market for us. So this year, the big focus has been getting out into the States, finding customers there, and we are, and it's working great. So I moved with my family to the Bay Area just last month, and it's great just to start to be in amongst the culture and in amongst, like, it makes such a big difference just being there and being in the same time zone, being able to take calls. Yeah, so that's the focus for us now, is like, how do we expand into the US?
Did you move with the main purpose of helping the business grow?
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay, so you are fully invested. Super happy to see that. More on the personal side, I'd love to know how you started your career. Let's say after college or when you're 18.
Yeah, so I went into university straight after school, and straight out of university I went into making robots, actually. So I worked for 10 years in the oil and gas industry. My first project was to create the guidance system for an oil drilling tool. So that was fun, you know, working in England and, you know, a lot of testing in West Texas, Oklahoma, all kinds of fun places. And then I moved to Norway and I was working on marine seismic acquisition. So that's where you drag 100,000 sensors behind a boat and you make some bangs and you listen to the echoes and figure out the subsurface geology. But, you know, you've got echolocation, you've got guidance systems, you've got a lot of technology going on into these systems. And that was a big greenfield project. That was super fun. So yeah, I did that for 10 years and that was great. I got to work in China. I lived in China for a few years. I lived in Norway for 5. It was a lot of fun. But after that, I was like, okay, it's time to see something else. I wanted to go into consulting, maybe more coaching, more training.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I ended up building this DevOps consulting business with a couple of other partners. We joined forces, and that was great. Learned a lot there, got a lot of exposure to different kinds of companies. And yeah, we were lucky enough to sell the company in 2019, and that was what really gave me the freedom and the drive to start Kosli.
Great story. And from your vast experiences, what would be your best piece of advice for a starting founder?
Well, I guess it's really hard to give context-free advice, but I would say that, like, it's harder than you think, but it's easier than you think to start a business. And so, like, the work is hard. Like, there's nothing easy about doing startups, but it's quite easy to start. And people often wait, and I just need the right time or just the right idea. But actually, maybe you don't need either of those things. If you just dive in and commit, you'll figure it out as you go. And it will be hard, but if you really want to do this, you kind of have to self-select in somehow.
Absolutely. I have one last question for you. What's your favorite SaaS product that you use and you'd recommend to other people, apart from Kosli?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I'm not sure I could answer that directly, but like when I think like my space is in DevOps and dev tools, and I think about what I've seen over the market in the last, say 10 years, and like products have matured, but what's been amazing for me is GitHub. Like GitHub from day one have given their users exactly what they wanted. Like it's been, and I think people take it for granted just now how innovative GitHub was. So yeah, okay, they were not the first, or there was plenty of options for Git hosting throughout the history, but pull request is a GitHub invention, and it's such a powerful way of distributed collaboration. And fork as well. Like you don't have to be a contributor to be able to start to develop on an open source project. That was massive. And then of course they had GitHub issues and now GitHub actions, and the Copilot. There's just step after step after step. It seems to be just a really well-run product organization, and I admire it a lot.
Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you want to tell us today on the podcast?
Not off the top of my head. I just like, if you are interested in this world of audit and compliance and security when it comes to software development, just get in touch with me. You'll find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter, and I'd love to continue the conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us. You did great.